All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Rocky Mountain NetSuite User Group, our September meeting. This is our agenda for the day. First of all, we'll have our welcome and general business, which is what we're doing right now. Then we'll have a chance for member announcements. If you have any announcements that you'd like to mention, you're welcome to do so. You can unmute yourself. You can also post it in our chat window, or you can post it in our LinkedIn forum, which I'll talk to you about a little bit later as well. After that, we're going to hear hopefully from our meeting sponsor today, Nuvo. Is anybody from Nuvo on yet? I'm not sure if I've seen anybody. That's okay. We have a little bit of time. Then our main presentation today is all about inventory, and that'll be for a couple hours, and that's presented by me. I'm Cory Anderson of Stratos ERP Partners. After that, we are going to hear from Mike Cackline. He's going to go over some 25.2 release highlights, and then we'll have our open forum. During the open forum, it gives everybody an opportunity as a group to ask questions, to help each other, to maybe point somebody in the right direction for a challenge they're having. And the topic is not limited at all. So you can bring up any question you have, could be related to today's meeting content, or could be related to, or could be not related at all in any way. So that's our open forum at the end of our meeting today. Talk about our membership. So membership to our user group is free. You register at www.rmnsug.org. When you register, it ensures that you get notification of upcoming meetings and events. We also, you get access to our LinkedIn forum. So if you're not a member, please go ahead and sign up. Where you can find us, we have a website. It's rmnsug.org. I'm going to show you that website here in just a minute because there's some cool things I want to point out. We also have a YouTube channel. We do record and post all of our meetings. They are hosted on YouTube. They are also available through our website. We have a LinkedIn group, and there's the URL to the group right there. You can also go to LinkedIn and search for Rocky Mountain NetSuite User Group or RMNSUG, and you'll find our user group there. So real quick, I want to point out on our website, I'm going to switch my screen. Hopefully this goes smoothly. Yeah, okay. So here's our website, and we have basically, you can find all of the posts that we've done under the posts or all of the meetings. We have all of our content here for many, many years. You can see we go way back. We've been recording and posting our meetings for a long time now. If you have a specific topic that you want to see if we've done, you can just type in the search box here and save searches. So we've done quite a bit of presentations on save searches over the years, for example. So I just wanted to point that out, that all of our meetings are recorded and posted here. And all of the slides from the presenters are also posted on our on these posts. So you can download the slides. You can just review them here in on our website directly. All right, I'll switch back to my slide. All right. So our LinkedIn forum, as I mentioned, just go to Rocky Mountain NetSuite User Group in LinkedIn. It's a public group. You can post questions. You can post job openings, or if you're looking for a job related to NetSuite or accounting or anything like that, you can use that user group forum to make those posts. And just be aware that we do monitor and approve the posts that go on our LinkedIn forum, because we don't want it to be very spammy. And so past meeting sponsors are allowed to make posts, but we just want to make it something that's useful for everybody and not just a whole bunch of people advertising their services on LinkedIn. Take just a quick moment to introduce our board of directors for the user group. In the upper left-hand corner, that's me. I'm Cory Anderson. I'm the founder of Stratos ERP Partners. We have Margie Cominos, our sponsorship and member chair of the Plant Scan Corporation. We have Mike Cackline, our communications chair of Vertifor. We have our speaker chair, Peggy Evleth, now with SquareWorks, formerly RSM, but new for Peggy. Congratulations, Peggy, in your new role. We have our treasurer, Dana Larson of Dana Larson Consulting, and then our newest board member who's been on the board for a while now, our events chair, Ryan Longnecker of Collective Mind Technologies. So just a quick thank you to everybody on the board for everything that you do to help maintain and support this user group. I definitely appreciate it, and I'm pretty sure all of our members appreciate it as well. So now is going to be that chance where if you have an announcement, you are welcome to unmute yourself and make that announcement. You can also post it in the chat window for the meeting. And if you think of something later on, you're welcome to make a post on our LinkedIn forum as well. So I'm going to pause for about a half a minute or so. If anybody has any announcements that they'd like to make, please feel free to unmute yourself right now. Does anybody have an announcement? And that's okay if you don't. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move on then. Last chance. All right. So like I said, our LinkedIn forum, LinkedIn group, you can make any announcements. You can post them there at any point. Evaluations, they'll be sent today. We do send out a survey. Please take a few moments to fill out that survey. There's maybe 6 or 7 questions on there. We'd like to get your feedback on how we're doing. There's also an area on there to say what you like or did not like about today's meeting. And then we also want your feedback on if there's any future topics that you're interested in. We've done a lot of topics over the years. We have a lot of topics on our list, but we always want to hear from you if there's something that is most interesting to you, and we'll get that in the queue most likely at some point to discuss. So please take a minute to fill out those evaluations, which will be emailed to you today. So sponsorship as I said, the membership to the user group is free. The cost of our meetings and running the group is supported by 2 levels of sponsorship. We have Suite App sponsors and consulting sponsors. Suite App sponsors must be available through suiteapp.com, and consulting sponsors must offer NetSuite consulting services and have certified NetSuite consultants on staff. For the consulting sponsorship slot, there's 2 ways to do that. You can either go to our website and sign up for a consulting sponsor slot, or you can, if you you can be a presenter at a meeting. And if you are a presenter or somebody from your company is a presenter, then you are the consulting sponsor for the day, and that helps support the user group as well. You can learn more and sign up for either sponsorship type at rmnsug.org/sponsorship. So we do offer CPE credits for our meetings. There will be polling questions throughout the meeting that you must answer to be eligible for the credits. You must have also registered for the Zoom meeting with your first name, last name, and email address. Make sure that your Zoom app is up to date for the polling question pop-ups. If the polling questions are not popping up for you, you may need to log out, log back in, update your app. We've had various issues from time to time, but usually they pop up for 99.9% of the folks. The CPE credits, they do take 4 to 6 weeks to be issued, so please be patient with us. We are volunteers, and it takes a while to process the CPE credits. And so I'd like to say that the CPE credits are also sponsored by RSM. So a huge thank you to Peggy and RSM for supporting and sponsoring the CPE credits. Even though Peggy is not with RSM anymore, we are hopeful that RSM will want to continue to sponsor the CPE credits for the user group. We think it's a very valuable addition to the group, and RSM obviously gets some good exposure from being that sponsor too. So we hope that we're going to be able to continue to offer these in the future. If for some reason we can't, we'll definitely let you know in the meeting invites in the future for the future meetings. So save the date. We have our next networking event coming up. This will be our final one for the year. It's going to be on October 23rd from 5 to 8 p.m. We are doing it in a central Denver location. It's going to be on Broadway. I think it's more like a South Broadway area. So hopefully that's a little bit more central for folks to get to. And so the invites will be coming soon for that. Please be on the lookout for it. Our networking events, we have free food, free drinks, free networking, and we usually do some sort of game or event. So we will have all of that included in our next event coming up in October. So our upcoming meetings in November this year, this is the first time we've done this topic. It's going to be native NetSuite budgeting versus NSPB. NSPB is NetSuite planning and budgeting. And planning and budgeting is the upgraded budgeting feature. It is an add-on that has an extra cost associated with it, but is a much more robust budgeting tool than the native NetSuite budgeting. So we're excited to do a deep dive into the differences to those coming up in November. And then in January, we always do reporting in January. That could be native reports, could be saved searches, could be Suite Analytics workbooks. We don't have the content locked down for that one yet, but it'll be one of those that concept in January. March, we're not sure. That's to be determined. So if we have any comments in our, like I said, in our evaluations, we find new meeting content and we put them into a couple of different TBD slots throughout the year. And then in May, we're going to have our workflows meeting, also known as SuiteFlow. So I'm going to take a moment here to thank our consulting sponsor. Consulting sponsor today is Stratos ERP Partners. That's my company. Stratos ERP Partners is a certified NetSuite Alliance partner specializing in NetSuite implementations, customizations, and Celigo integrations. They offer personalized consulting services designed to align business processes with NetSuite's capabilities, ensuring efficient and tailored ERP solutions. Their expertise spans multiple industries, including e-commerce, wholesale distribution, professional services, and many more, with a strong commitment to client success through hands-on support. Stratos focuses on driving growth and efficiency by optimizing business software systems. So that's our consulting sponsor for today, Stratos. And then I'd also like to say thank you to our Suite App sponsor, Nuvo. At this point, I'm going to see if...
No, he's not on. There is an emergency that came up, and he said he would not be able to be on the call and present today.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then we won't hear from Nuvo today, but they do have a raffle, and they are giving away some pretty sweet Bose noise canceling headphones. So, Margie, do you have the link to that raffle handy?
I do. I will
Okay,
post it in the chat now.
that would be great. Yeah, so we'll make sure that we post that raffle a few times throughout the meeting. Make sure you go to Nuvo's website to learn about what they do. It's unfortunate we don't have David with us today, but we'll still post that raffle for him. So with that, normally we'd be hearing from Nuvo for about 10 minutes or so. I think what I'll do is just go ahead and get started on the main presentation early at this point. So I will stop sharing and then switch over to my main presentation. Give me just a moment to get configured here, please. Okay, I think I'm all set here. I'm going to share my screen. And if somebody could just confirm that they can see my slide okay.
Yep,
We got
Yes.
it.
fine. Yep.
Thank you. All right. So today we are going to be talking about inventory. First of all, I'm going to talk a little bit about me. So as you know, I'm Cory from Stratos ERP Partners. We're a NetSuite Alliance partner. We're also a Celigo certified partner. We focus on NetSuite implementation, support, and integrations. So I am the founder and principal consultant of Stratos. I've been working with NetSuite since 2013. I started my NetSuite journey as an end user. The company that I was working for purchased NetSuite, and that was back in 2013. And we went through NetSuite implementation. I became a power user, became the NetSuite administrator for the company, and I started learning all about it. When we started using NetSuite, I loved it. I loved it so much. I thought it was the coolest thing, and I still do. It does such an amazing thing for helping you run your business and puts everything in one place. Is it perfect and flawless? No, but no system is ever going to be. But with NetSuite and its configurability and customization options, I think it's just such a powerful tool for businesses to run their company on. So anyway, I love NetSuite. Been working with it for, what is that, almost 13 years now. I became the board president, the Rocky Mountain NetSuite User Group board president. I've been doing that since 2018. I've been a board member since 2014 because, like I said, I loved NetSuite and I wanted to learn as much as I could. So I joined the board to network and learn more as much as I could. I have 4 NetSuite certifications. I have 8 Celigo certifications. I specialize in inventory, e-commerce, wholesale distribution, EDI, and integrations. I do a lot of work outside of those areas as well, but those are really my sweet spot. The company that I came from was an online retailer. We sold well, the company is called AvidMax. They're still in business. They're still out there. They do online fly fishing and sporting goods. We sold on Amazon, eBay. Those are the main marketplaces, but there's a ton of other marketplaces we tried throughout the years. We had integrations into NetSuite for those marketplaces. We had a ton of inventory products. So I've done a lot of work around that, pretty much since the beginning of my time with NetSuite. All right, so here's today's agenda. We're going to first of all talk about the different types of inventory records in NetSuite. Then we're going to talk about elements of an item record, and I'm going to say inventory and item kind of interchangeably. Excuse me. We'll talk about warehouse locations, transferring inventory, importing and exporting item records. I think that's an important thing to understand, and I'll have some recommendations around that. We'll talk about inventory management. And then there was a topic I added at the last minute called merchandise hierarchy. I just didn't get it into my agenda here, but I am going to talk about that today as well. I think it's a pretty cool underutilized feature. And then if we have extra time, I'm going to go through the purchase order to payment process and then the drop shipping and special order inventory processes. I think it's important to understand how those processes work, especially as it relates to inventory. But I just may not have time, depending upon how long we go here today. For questions as we go through the meeting, if you could please post your questions in the chat window. I may try and pause and answer those questions, or if my fellow board members can answer the questions as we go, that would be great as well. If there's something that a board member thinks we should talk about as a group, please let me know, and we'll spend some time looking at those questions. And then we'll also have time for Q&A at the very end and in moving into our open forum as well. All right, so let's get jumped in here. So the features being discussed today, these features may or may not be available in your NetSuite account. We're going to talk about some advanced features, some things that require extra add-on modules. Really, this presentation focuses on providing a better understanding of the key inventory related features, but not necessarily specific module requirements. So I'm pulling information from all kinds of different inventory-based features in NetSuite, but they may span different modules in NetSuite. As I mentioned before, the LinkedIn form is available to all members for detailed follow-up questions. If there's anything that you want to talk about or we didn't cover here, please feel free to start a conversation on our LinkedIn forum. We'd love to communicate through there. I'd also point out that Suite Answers offers extensive information on all of the features, including video training to support your learning. The NetSuite Learning Center, now called MyLearn, if you have access to that through your company subscription, your NetSuite subscription, there's great training materials there. And then there's always the NetSuite user manual, which is the little help button in the upper right-hand corner of your NetSuite screen. That's the user manual. That's where they post all of the information of how things work. And it's a great place to start if you want to start learning about specific features in your system. So I'm going to mention some of these things today. Advanced inventory features. These are some things that I'm not going to talk about in detail today. I just want to bring them up so that everybody is aware that these features are available in the system. So we'll talk about them real quick. So barcoding and item labels. So NetSuite supports barcoding and item labels to streamline inventory tracking and improve accuracy during receiving, picking, and shipping processes. So you can actually print barcodes directly out of NetSuite. You can print them from an item record. You can configure save searches to print a whole sheet of barcodes for specific products. You can do those. You can do regular item labels like you may see in like a retail store. So there's all of those features available. We're just not going to cover them in detail today. Lot tracking. So lot tracking enables tracking of inventory by batch or production lot. That helps manage expiration dates and compliance requirements. We see lot tracking a lot or often in food and beverage or products that have an expiration date, like maybe beauty products and stuff like that. You can have lots that have expiration dates and statuses and things like that. So that's also a feature. We're just not going to go into detail. Matrix items, I actually will talk about this a little bit later, but just not in super detail. Matrix items allow for management of similar items in variation sets by options such as size and color, using a parent item and sub-item structure. I probably should, in hindsight, remove this from this slide because I do talk about it, but I just don't go into it, like how to set up a matrix item and how all of that configuration works. But there is a way in NetSuite to track items in a group in a variation set, and it's called matrix items. Pick, pack, and ship. So NetSuite supports efficient pick, pack, and ship workflows to optimize order fulfillment and improve warehouse operations. They have a Ship Central functionality that ties into the pick, pack, and ship process. Pick, pack, and ship is a fulfillment-based concept. So if you get an order, you might pick the order, from your warehouse, and then you take it to a packing station and you pack it up, you put it in a box, and then you ship it. So there is that extra functionality available for sure. Just not going to go into detail. We have serialized inventory. Serialized inventory tracks individual units by unique serial numbers. It enables precise control over warranty and service management. So there is a serialized inventory item type. I would just caution you about using serialized inventory. Make sure that you have a very strong use case for it, because you cannot change inventory types once you create an inventory item and you get sales history on them. Serialized inventory is very powerful and it's very, very useful for what it's intended to do. But it has very strict limitations on it as well when it comes to adjusting inventory or receiving inventory or shipping or fulfilling. There's very specific requirements there that are a little bit limiting in some ways. But it's necessary if you actually need to use serialized inventory. The last one here, multiple units of measure. So NetSuite supports managing inventory in multiple units of measure to accommodate different purchasing and selling requirements. An example of this is the standard default unit of measure is each or eaches. It represents one item. Yeah, Margie, good point. You can convert a non-inventory item into an inventory item, but you can't go inventory to serialized inventory, and you can't go back to non-inventory from inventory. So it's kind of a one-way street on that one. Sorry, so multiple units of measure. One example might be if you purchase a length of rope or chain in a spool of, let's say, 100 feet. You can purchase it in 100 feet, but then you can sell it by the foot or sell it by the inch or whatever you want to do. Another unit of measure might be a weight unit. So if you buy something by the pound and you sell it by the ounce, you can use multiple units of measure to facilitate that type of thing. So. All right, so that's some advanced inventory features that are available in NetSuite. If you have any other, if you have any questions, you want to deep dive into those again, please go to the Help Center. It's the user book, the user manual for NetSuite, and it'll talk all about all of these different features. All right, let me jump forward here. All right, so now we're going to jump into the different types of inventory. I am going to go into a little bit more detail here. This is just a quick overview. So we have physical item types in NetSuite. So physical items include items, matrix items, kits and packages, item groups, and assembly items. We have non-inventory item types. Non-inventory items cover various categories, such as items for sale created per order, or they're customized per order. You might use non-inventory for office supplies, drop ship items, service items, descriptions, download items, gift certificates, other charge. So other charge is an item type name called specifically other charge. And there's very specific use cases for those. Won't go into a ton of detail on all of those non-inventory item types. We're kind of focused on more of the physical items in this presentation, but we will talk about it in a little bit of detail. And examples of physical items, items like a tent, matrix items with variations such as size and color, kits. We have an ultimate camping kit that I'm going to show a little bit later here, and assembly items that are made from components like fabric and aluminum poles. We'll go into those a little bit more detail. And then examples of non-inventory items are for sale items customized per order, non-inventory for purchase like office supplies, non-inventory for resale such as dropship items that are sold directly from vendors. So you can use a non-inventory item for resale for dropship. Maybe it's inventory that you would never stock in your system, but you still need to track cost and sale price on those. So there's a lot of different reasons to use non-inventory items. A lot of different examples I've seen over the years of specific requirements, and so just know that they're there. They're options for you. So let's talk a little bit more detail about physical item types. So we have, first of all, items. So these are the different item types in NetSuite. First of all, just an item, otherwise known as an inventory item. These are individual items that are sold and tracked by themselves, such as a tent. Then we have matrix items. These are similar items in a variation set with a parent item, which is not a real item, and then sub-items that vary by options such as size and color. just a quick note, the best practice, if you are going to use matrix items, use the matrix item assistant to create matrix items. The way matrix items work is that each of the child items are going to have a specific field that defines how it varies. So in this example, we have size and color. So on each of the children, you'd have one field for size, one field for color, and those have to be unique combinations across the whole variation set. So you couldn't have children that both are small and red, for example. The system will enforce uniqueness across those matrix items. The other thing is I'm gonna grab my little pointer, kits and packages. And I'm gonna talk about these in a little bit more detail here. A kit or package is sold as one unit, but has several member components. So for example, I have this ultimate camping kit I'm gonna show you. It'll include a tent, a sleeping bag, a mattress, and a stove. And in this example, they'd be priced at $599.95. Then we have item groups. Item groups are similar to kits and packages, but they do function fundamentally a little bit different. So an item group is also sold as one unit, but pricing is dependent on its members. So if we have the ultimate camping kit as an example, the tent is 300, the sleeping bag's 200. All of those add up to a total of 650. And the price of it is dependent upon the sum of the components, which I'll show a little bit more in detail here. Then we have assembly items. So assembly items are inventory items made of several components combined into a single item, such as fabric, thread, zippers, mesh, strap, aluminum poles. That's all of the components that you need to actually physically build a tent, to create a tent. So an assembly item in NetSuite is used in a manufacturing type process. There are other use cases for assembly items. There's no right or wrong way to use them if it fits your business processes. But essentially, an assembly item it requires you to build the item first. So if we have an assembly item that's composed or has the components of all of these items here, we have to have each one of these in stock in NetSuite. And we're going to basically consume one of these to build one complete assembly item. You cannot sell an assembly item until or ship it until it is built in NetSuite. And we're not going to talk about that in detail because it kind of bleeds more into like a manufacturing discussion. But from a high level, the way you build assembly items is with a work order. And a work order represents that you need to build this assembly item, and then you complete the work order. You do a assembly build, and then you have, instead of different quantities of these components, it's all consumed, and now you have a quantity of an assembly item to build. So not going to go too much into the manufacturing, but just know that that's the purpose of assembly items. You have to build it before you can sell it. There's also advanced manufacturing, where instead of just having a component, you have a bill of materials, and then you have bill of material revisions. And it gets into even more complicated manufacturing processes. You can get into WIP and routing. You can add overhead costs to the cost of building an assembly item. That's all functionality that's available in NetSuite. But again, it's manufacturing, and we're just not going to get into the details around that today. All right, so that's our physical item types. Now we'll talk about our non-inventory item types. So these are, again, types of items these are what NetSuite calls these items. So if you go to create a new item, these are the names that you'll see of the item types. So we have non-inventory, and these three along the top are very similar, but there's one key difference I'll point out here in a minute. This first one, non-inventory for sale. It's items you custom create for each order that are sold but not tracked as inventory. There are lots of use cases for non-inventory for sale. Non-inventory for purchase might be items like office supplies that you buy for internal use but you don't sell to customers, but you need to track cost on that. Non-inventory for sale might be something you need to track income for, but you don't necessarily have cost associated with it, so you don't need to track cost. And then you have non-inventory for resale. Non-inventory for resale could be like dropship items that you sell from a vendor without storing in your warehouse. So you need to track income for selling that item, but you also need to track cost that the vendor is going to charge you for that item. But you don't necessarily need to receive that item into your inventory and then fulfill it and track on-hand inventory and things like that. That's one option for using non-inventory. Another popular use for non-inventory for resale are items like software as a service, or any other as a service types of things. So maybe you have a data as a service. Maybe you provide a data stream for your customers. There's a lot of different use cases for non-inventory for resale. I want to point out that the primary difference, my note down here, between for purchase, for sale, and for resale is the account options on the item record. So, for example, a non-inventory for sale item doesn't have a COGS account setting on it. Non-inventory for purchase doesn't have an income account set on it, but a non-inventory for resale has both a COGS and an income account. Oftentimes what I recommend is if you're not sure what to do, just use non-inventory for resale, because even if it requires a COGS and an income account, but it's a non-inventory for purchase item, you're not going to have an income account because you're not selling it. So there's no income going to show up on your books for it. So there's no problem if you're just not sure. Or if you have a lot of people that are creating different items in NetSuite and you kind of things get people get confused, they're not sure which one to use, you can just tell them use non-inventory for resale, and it's going to cover all of your use cases down the road. No problem with doing just non-inventory for resale because of those two different accounts. Next one here is service items. So these are non-physical items provided as services rather than tangible products. Like maybe you sell a maintenance contract on your products, and so that may be a service item. Maybe you sell a support product for maybe software support or IT support, something like that. So you can use service items in NetSuite for that. And so these are going to have COGS and income accounts as well. Download items, think of like digital products or files that customers can download after purchase. And then other charge items. So other charge items are useful for things like gift certificates, gift wrapping. There's a little bit of a crossover here because you might say, well, I could use a service item for gift wrapping, or I could use other charge item for something you might think of as a service. There's not really any right or wrong way to do that. There are some differences between these different item records. And so if you're not sure, again, go to the Help Center or Suite Answers, and they'll list out all of the little differences between these. A lot of cases, you can also use non-inventory for resale, for things like gift wrapping or for what you might consider a service item. So there's definitely some crossover there, not necessarily any right or wrong way to do it, other than being aware that there's different accounts available for different, for this for sale, for purchase, for resale. That's the key difference there. All right. Take a quick pause. Any questions so far? Everybody doing okay? All right.
Cory, I have a quick question.
Okay.
Is anyone else having internet problems where you're cutting in and out, or is it just a personal problem over at my end? I just wanted to make sure.
Sounds
I'm
great
good
to
on
me.
this end.
Okay, so
Mhm.
it's our internet. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for checking, Margie. That's good to know. Okay. Sounds like everybody's good. All right. All right. So I'll go ahead and move on then. All right, so now we're going to talk about a little bit more detail about items and matrix items, about these physical item types. As I mentioned before, an item or an inventory item are individual items that are sold and tracked by themselves. The example here is a tent as a single item. Each item has its own unique SKU and inventory tracking in NetSuite. Then we have matrix items, and a matrix items, these kind of bleed together because um, each of the um, each of the child items, like that represent one shirt size and color, is an inventory item. But the key difference here is that that inventory item has a parent item, which makes it then a matrix item. So these are similar items in a variation set. They have a parent item in NetSuite that's not a real item. This represents the group. And usually what I recommend is just using an inventory item as the parent item and name the SKU for the parent item, something that is descriptive of what the product is or what the variation set is. And then usually a dash P at the end of it. And so if you do a dash P in the product, the item name number, which I'll talk about later, that kind of makes it easy to find your parent SKUs or to identify an item that is a parent SKU. And you know you're never going to have actual inventory of a parent SKU. It just represents the group of SKUs. The sub items are actual items with variations like size and color, as I mentioned. Small, medium, large. We have like blue, red, tan, gray. So NetSuite is going to enforce uniqueness. As I mentioned, you can't have too small blue in the matrix set. It's going to make sure that each one of those combinations is unique. And there are custom fields that are used on the child SKUs to represent what their variation is. Why would you want to use matrix items? One of the use cases is if you sell products on an e-commerce website, for example, you need to group those products on an e-commerce site so that you have one display page for that item group on an e-com site. And then you have maybe a drop down to choose your size and color options. Another reason you might want to use matrix items is if you want to sell all of these child items, but you want reporting to roll up to the top item. Maybe you want to be able to view the reporting as how many of this variation set have you sold, not necessarily each of the individual items. So matrix items give you the ability to do roll-up reporting and then sell things in a unified page like on an e-commerce site. I'll also mention that I do a lot of work with Shopify and NetSuite, and there's other ways to do that if you have variation sets that you sell on an e-commerce site. You can do what's called a virtual variation, and so you still need a parent item, but you don't have to officially use the matrix functionality in NetSuite. Sometimes the matrix functionality can be a little bit limiting in some of the things that you can do. So I just want to point it out that there's other ways. You don't have to use the matrix items. You can create virtual variations in NetSuite, but it would still be represented by having one parent item. And then you're still going to have some custom fields that are going to represent the variations. But also be careful because then NetSuite isn't enforcing uniqueness across those. So different ways to approach it, different ways to do it. If you're not sure, I'd be happy to talk about it in LinkedIn forum or whatever. But different ways to approach it. Okay, so let's talk about item groups and kits. And I'm just going to call them kits. NetSuite says kit/package. I always stumble. I'm like, do I say kits packages or just kits, or do people know what I mean when I just say kits? So I'm just going to call them kits, but in NetSuite you're going to see it called kits/packages. So I mentioned this a little bit before. So this is my ultimate camping kit. We have an item group represented up here, and then we have a kit package. And you can see that they're essentially the same thing. But there's some key differences of how they function. First of all is the pricing. If you have an item group, the price is the sum of its components price. So 300, 100, 250, that's $650. So if you add this item group to a sales order, the price is going to come up at $650. On the other hand, if you have a kit package, you can price that kit individually. So even though the sum of the components is $650, I can say the price of the kit is $599.95. And when you add this item to a NetSuite sales order, it'll come up with, boom, just that one price. Versus if you add an item group to a sales order, it's going to list out the price for each of these items. I'm actually going to show you how that works in NetSuite here in just a minute. There are some other differences to understand with groups and kits, item groups versus kits. One limitation of a kit is when you add a kit to a sales order, and let's say you don't have one of those items in stock to fulfill the entire kit, you cannot fulfill the other components first. So the kit has to be fulfilled as an entire package at one time. And if you want to try and break it out so that maybe if you have different locations and you want to fulfill from different locations, you can't do that with a kit. It's very, very challenging to work with that. If you have one location and everything's always in stock, then kits are no problem. And they're a great way to offer a bundled price for everything. So see, Renee, in both cases, item group or kit, will each item show up separately on the sales order or invoice? How about the picker, like the picking ticket? I'm going to show you what that looks like. There are different options. So you can have it show each of the individual items in the case of a group, or you can, in the case of a kit, you can show all of the individual items, or you can show just the one kit itself. I'm not going to show what all the differences are there, but I'll show you essentially what it'll look like in a lot of cases that I've seen. Item groups, on the other hand, you can fulfill each line individually. You can also remove, now that I think you can also remove one of the items. So if you add an item group, it's going to add all the items to a sales order line. And I'm pretty sure you can just remove one of them. But you can also change pricing. So that's the other thing here, is that you can change the price of each individual item in that group on a sales order. So I'm going to jump into NetSuite and kind of go through a little bit about how that works. I have my demo account here. Oh, by the way, here's the Nuvo raffle. If you haven't entered yet, they have a really nice pair of Bose headphones for the raffle. Okay, so I'm going to go to, I'm just going to create a new sales order, and I have this ultimate camping kit. Well, it's not camping gear in this NetSuite account, but it's a kit. I have a couple of different components set up. I have a laptop group, basically. I have a kit, and then I have an item group, and I'll show you how each one of them works. So I'm going to enter some required information here first. Okay, that looks good. All right. So first of all, I'm going to add, I have these laptop combos. So the laptop combo, okay, I don't have enough. That's fine. I'm still going to add it to the sales order. So you can see here, this laptop combo kit, it does consist of multiple components, but when I add it to the order here, we're only seeing that one bundle, that one line for the whole thing. Versus if I add the group, the item group type. see what it does here is it breaks it all out. So these are all of the 4 components that make up that item group. And each one of these, I can come in here and I can say, well, first of all, I'm going to point this out. You have this total price down here of $2,044.94. So that's the sum of these components. If I change this of one of the components, okay, that's fine. You can see that the total price changes. So there's a setting on the item record, and I'll point this out a little bit later. There's a setting to either show this start and end point of a group or not show the start and end point of a group. When you go to print a picking ticket for this, usually, so there's also a setting for the kits, and this is, I think, a global setting, where you can show the different components, like on a picking ticket. So I'm going to go ahead and just remove, oh, and I'm going to also test this. Yeah, see, I can just remove one item from that group if I say, oh, well, I don't want to sell that one as part of this group today. Yeah, Samita, we're going to have poll questions coming up here shortly. Thank you for asking. Okay, so I'm just going to remove all of this stuff. Okay, so I removed the group. It removed all the extra lines. I'm going to go ahead and save this combo. I don't have the picking ticket configured on this account, so I can't really show that, but I'm going to print the sales order, and I'm pretty sure it's going to print out each of the lines on there. So let's look and see what that looks like after this order saves. And there's definitely ways to show all of the different components on a picking ticket. It's just that this account, the picking ticket isn't configured. Come on, let's save here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just print this sales order. And I think to Margie's point that she just put in the chat window there, this may demonstrate that. Displaying item groups on transaction forms. Oh, I may not have that enabled. Display components on transactions is an option. So there's definitely some levers that you can change on the way that these display and function. Okay, so here's a good example of how we have the kit, and I have the setting enabled to show the components on the printout. So you see each of the different components. In theory, a picking ticket is going to look very similar to this, but you're not necessarily going to see the top level kit item on a picking ticket. It's configurable though, so I think you could probably do that either way. So then this is what like if you were to send this sales order to your customer, then this is what they would see. You see 0 price for each of the individual components, but then, one total price for the whole kit. The item group is going to be similar. You'll see each of the components on the printout as well. Okay, I think that's what I wanted. That's everything I wanted to show on how those function on a sales order. So I'm going to switch back to my slideshow here. Okay, and ask and you shall receive, Samita. So we have our first CPE polling question. Give me just a minute here. I need to pop this up. There's my polls. First question. Okay, so I've launched the first question. This one is a true false. NetSuite supports barcoding and item labels to help streamline inventory tracking and improve accuracy during receiving, picking, and shipping. Is that true or false? I'm going to wait about a minute for everybody that wants to answer. And again, these polls are for the CPE credits. If you are not interested in CPE credits, you do not need to do the polls. Or you can just for fun if you want. So I'm going to wait another 20 seconds or so here. Okay, CPE question, 5 seconds left, and anybody else needs to answer it, wants to answer it. All right, I'm going to end the poll. I'm
Hey,
going to share the
Cory, quick thing. I'm not able to answer because I think you've got me set up a specific way in the meeting.
Okay. So maybe if
It doesn't give me the option to answer.
maybe you need to be removed as a co-host then.
That's possible.
I
Because it
don't.
allows me to launch the questions, but I can't answer them.
Mike, can you remove Peggy from co-host? You're the host, so I can't do it.
Yep. I'll do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll
Yep.
grab the next one.
Okay. All right. Anyway, the answer is true. So NetSuite does support barcoding and item labels. All right. So that was our first polling question. I'm going to now move on to our second polling question. We're going to do 2 in a row here real quick. So where's my next question? Peggy, hopefully this shows up for you. So here's our question 2. Should be visible on your screen. Which of the following is an example of a physical inventory item type? A tent, a gift certificate, a downloadable file, or a service fee?
It's working now, Cory. Thank you.
Excellent. About 30 seconds for the CPE question number 2. It's a good idea to answer all of the CPE questions if you want CPE credits. About 10 seconds left. All right, I'm going to end the poll, share the results. The answer is A. A tent is an example of a physical inventory item type. Right. Go ahead and stop sharing that and close that, and we'll move on. All right. So assembly items. Assembly items are like theoretically a little bit similar to kits and or could be similar to kits or item groups. You could theoretically make that ultimate camping kit that I showed you. That could be an assembly item. If you wanted to have to build a complete kit before it's shipped and consume one of each of those components to ship an entire kit, you could theoretically make it the ultimate camping kit and assembly item. That may not make sense, but it's possible. Assembly items, there's a ton of different use cases for assembly items. But just know that they have to be manufactured. They have to be put together before you can sell them. So theoretically, or I'm sorry, ideally, you're combining raw materials, such as fabric, thread, zippers, mesh, strap material, and then you're going to have some labor involved in that. Sewing those things together, putting it all together. There's labor and overhead that you can also track in an assembly item. So you can use other item types. You could use other item types in it, like a non-inventory item type, with a cost in an assembly item. Then you can also do, if you need more advanced manufacturing, like I mentioned, there's bills of material and bill of material revisions. Margie is very good at all of the manufacturing stuff. If anybody has manufacturing specific questions, she can answer probably a lot of that. I'm not sure about whip and routing, but anyway, Margie, and then at some point we'll probably do a manufacturing presentation from Margie because that's what she does. Anyway, so assembly items, you have to build them. You build them like from a basic level, you use a work order, and then you create an assembly build. It consumes the raw materials and produces one finished assembly item. You can also have different quantities of components. So maybe you need to use aluminum poles. You track them individually, but you add 4 of them into your assembly item. So you consume 4 poles into that one assembly item. So that's kind of the core concept of assembly items. Talk a little bit about the differences between assemblies, kits, and groups. So assembly items are manufactured by combining raw materials you stock. Kits and item groups are units composed of items from your inventory sold as one unit. Pricing. Assembly item price is independent of its components prices. It doesn't matter how much the components cost or how much they sell for. You can price an assembly item any way that you want. A kit is also independent. Its price is independent of its member prices. Then, as we mentioned, the item group price is dependent on its member prices. GL accounts or general ledger accounts. So assemblies can identify separate COGS, income, and asset accounts from the components. Kits and packages identify a separate income account, and item groups have no account designations on that item record. The income and the income and COGS accounts for the item groups are they're sourced from each of the individual components. Same thing with the kits for COGS is sourced from the individual components, but the kit has a separate income account. One thing to note that I forgot to mention is that with these different kits, these item types. Let's see, how do I say this? You can have non-inventory items in a kit. You can have non-inventory items in an item group. You can have an assembly item as a component of a kit, or an assembly item that's a component of an item group. I think you can even do a kit as a component of a higher level kit. I can't think of any specific use cases, but I think that's come up in the past, and I think you can do that. So there's not really any restrictions on what you can use for components. Okay, so let me see if I can answer this question from Johan. When using a lot numbered assembly item, is it possible to put a specific lot number of that item into a kit? Specific lot number into a kit. I don't think there is. I'm not 100% sure on that. But I think fundamentally you could have multiple lot numbered assembly items as a component of a kit, and so then which lot number do you use for that top level kit? So fundamentally, I think it's not designed that way. It's not designed to function that way. Okay, last one here, the inventory impact. So building an assembly affects inventory by consuming the raw materials. Fulfilling a kit or a group involves selling prepackaged or grouped components without separate inventory tracking. Grouped components without separate inventory tracking. That's not true for groups, actually. Now that I think about it, they do have separate inventory tracking for kits and groups. So that statement is confusing. I'll have to think about that later on. All right. So that's the end of our discussion about different inventory types. We're going to move into a little bit more detailed area. We'll talk about the key elements of an item record. So in an item record, we have, these are what I mean by key elements is fields that are kind of the standard core fields of an item record. First of all, we have an internal ID. So an internal ID is used internally within NetSuite only, and it uniquely identifies each item record. Internal IDs are automatically assigned by NetSuite, and they are not changeable. You cannot change an internal ID. They are designed to enforce uniqueness across the entire system by record type. So internal IDs are also useful in integrations. If you're integrating to like an EDI system, or if you're integrating to an external like a fulfillment center or an e-commerce website, anything like that, internal IDs are very useful in a lot of those cases because they're guaranteed to be unique within NetSuite. So I use internal IDs a lot in different processes because of that fact. External ID. So these are an external ID is an optional field. It's really intended for use for integration with external systems using unique SKU identifiers. By default, they're not displayed on the item record, but they can be sourced via a workflow. So for example, what I mean by that is you can create a custom field called external ID on your item records, and then you can have a workflow that populates that external ID from the actual external ID. But NetSuite is weird about the external ID. You can't just like expose it to a form, which makes no sense to me. Now I think about it, I don't understand why they do that. It would be easy to just let you expose it on a form. I'm sure there's a reason for it somewhere, but a lot of times what I recommend for an external ID is to make the external ID the same as the SKU. And when I say SKU, that's the item name number. And so I would say, like in this is an example. So this 985-96305, like in this item name number or SKU, like this 985 might represent a manufacturer. This last 5 digits might represent the last 5 of the UPC code, for example. So if you use this as the external ID, then that also allows you to use that field for external integrations and to have uniqueness across all of your item records. And I'm thinking in the back of my head, I don't remember if NetSuite enforces uniqueness in an external ID. I feel like it does. It does.
Definitely does. Yeah.
It definitely does. Okay, yeah. Yeah, thank you, Roy, as well. Yeah, so that's the other benefit then of the external ID is that it enforces uniqueness. So you can have this SKU, and you can only have one of those as the external ID, as opposed to an item name number. So the item name number is, again, it's kind of something like this. It can be anything you want. It's up to 60 characters. The item name number will appear in transaction lists and is the primary identifier for the item. I will also show you on an item record like what this looks like, what they are. Yeah, and so Jeffrey's talking about CSV imports, which external ID and internal ID, you can use either one, but that's one of the reasons, Jeffrey, I recommend external ID, because that's a great point. Item name number, so we'll talk about that again. It's a SKU, SKU, stock keeping unit is what that would stand for normally. Display name code. So the display name code, if it's populated, this name or code will appear in the item column in transactions. It provides an alternative display to the item name number. So the display name code would be something a little bit more user readable, like Ultimate Camping Kit, whereas the SKU might be something like this. And by the way, whenever if somebody's using creating kit item records in NetSuite, I always recommend doing the end of the external ID and the item name number with a -K or a -kit, so that it's easy to know when you're looking at that what that item record type is, in case you have SKUs that look very, very similar to each other. Anyway, so if you use a code like this for your SKU, the display name code is something that's legible. It's readable by on a sales order form or a picking ticket or something like that, so that it describes just a very short description of what that item is. UPC code. So UPC code, not everybody needs them, but they are important in certain situations. So for example, if you sell products that other companies also sell the same product, if it like a retail store, for example, or an e-commerce site, the UPC is something that is unique to that one specific product, and it's created by the manufacturer of that product. So UPCs are used on e-commerce sites. They're used on Amazon. They're used on eBay, Walmart.com. Like all of these e-commerce sites, they want these UPCs because it gives them a way to say, oh, you're selling an ultimate tent kit, and Bob's camping gear down the street is selling the same product. They can tell because by that UPC code. So standard is 12 digits, and then there's also EAN, which is I think European version of a UPC, and those are 13 digits long. But NetSuite supports both 12 and 13 digit UPC codes. Vendors. So I'm going to go through and show all of this on an item record in NetSuite. But vendors include a vendor code, a purchase price. The purchase price shows 2 decimals, but stores more precision, just FYI. A quantity pricing schedule for discounts, designation of preferred vendor for automatic purchase suggestions. So these are just some things that I think are important to understand. There's obviously a lot of other fields on an item record. These are 6 of the most important ones that I think you should be aware of. Again, I'm going to go in and show you what an item record looks like, and we'll kind of look at each of those fields. All right, so let's talk about item pricing. So item pricing is an element of an item record. And there's a few different ways that you can price items in NetSuite. And I think it's important to understand how this works, because NetSuite's pricing engine, I think, is very functional. It's not complex, but it has a lot of functionality to it, and it's very useful in a lot of cases. Renee, okay, let me, before I go into pricing setup, Renee, your question is, what is the difference between purchase price, transfer price, and vendor cost? So it can be a complicated answer. So purchase price and vendor cost theoretically are the same thing. But there are different places on an item record. There's one place for a purchase price, and there's another place for your vendor price. If your purchase price is populated but your vendor price is not, then that purchase price is what will show up on a PO. But if your vendor price is populated at the vendor level, then that's the value that's used on a PO. So they're kind of the same thing, but they have a little bit of different functionality. And then your transfer price is typically like the default is that it'll source from like your purchase price. I think you can also source from your average cost, but you can also define a transfer price. So if you're transferring from one location to another and you need to add $15 to cover the cost of transferring, then you can add that to your transfer price, and then your receiving location, that becomes their cost of that product when it's received. So there's a lot more, I think, under the covers on that, but that's essentially what they are. And then do you have to have a default cost in every location to have an inventory valuation? or will the purchase price be fine? Well, the cost, the inventory valuation is based on the average cost, not on the purchase pricing. The average cost is sourced from what you actually buy the products for, but it's averaged over the whole life of you purchasing that item. So inventory valuation uses average cost unless you're doing standard cost. And standard cost is a giant pain in the rear, and I don't recommend it, but some companies have to use it for manufacturing purposes. But average cost is the default. So I hope that answers that question. Oh, you use standard cost. Okay, sorry. Then that doesn't apply. There's a whole nother level of complexity with standard cost. So all right, I'm gonna go into this item pricing. Okay, so on item pricing, you can set up price levels for each item to define your base prices. And I'll go through this and show you an example in NetSuite. In this screenshot here, we have a base price. So we're looking at sales and pricing subtab and then the pricing, and we have different currency set up here, but this is kind of just a quick overview. So we have a base price, and then we have these different price levels: alternate price 1, 2, and 3. Those are price levels. So you can assign a different discount or markup amounts to price levels to reflect your pricing strategies. So for example, you can make this alternate price, you could rename it and call it 10% discount. And when you set up that price level, you can say it's minus 10%, and it'll take 10% off of the base price and automatically populate whatever that number would be. So that would be what, $360 in this case, for a 10%. So 10% discount. You can also create a price level that is an increase in price. So you can define it and say plus 10%. So then it would be a $440 price level at that point. So different functionality there. You can create price groups, and creating price groups, you can do that. And this is, I'm changing what I'm saying here. You don't have to use the same price levels for the price groups. It's sometimes easier for organizational purposes, but I'm going to demonstrate how the pricing works across the different areas, customers and item records here in a minute. So you can assign price groups to individual customers and apply specific pricing for those groups. And then customers can also be directly assigned to a price level without a price group. So there's a little bit of a hierarchy of how that works. So hopefully this will kind of help describe it. So if we're going to start from the top down. So if we're talking about pricing that a specific customer gets, okay? So item pricing is the first one that trumps everything else. So on an item pricing, you're going to define, well, you're going to do it on the customer record. There's going to be an item, there's going to be a price level, there's going to be a currency, and you can also define, instead of a price level, just a specific price. So that is that overrides everything else. If there's an item price on a customer level, that's the price they get for that item. Then we have group pricing or pricing groups. Again, this is assigned at a customer level, but it's also assigned at the item level. An item can be part of one pricing group. It can only be part of one pricing group. It cannot be part of more than one. But a customer can have multiple pricing groups assigned to them. So I'll show you how that works. Then we have the price level, which on a customer record, you can say this customer gets a specific price level. And then no matter what item they purchase, they're going to get whatever that price level price is for that item. So if you, for example, you do the 10% discount price level, you assign that to the customer level, and then that's the price they get on every single item that they purchase. If they have group pricing, though, the group pricing will override whatever their price level is. And then if they have item-specific pricing, that'll override group pricing and price level. If none of this is defined on a customer record, the standard is base price. If you add the item to a sales order, it's just going to come in with that base price by default. Now, NetSuite is really powerful with this pricing engine because it does all of this logic in the background as you're adding items to your sales order. It says, first of all, it says, okay, does this customer have a specific item price? No, they don't. Okay, great. Does this customer have a pricing group for the item that this is a price part of? Oh, yes, they do. Okay, now it's going to put in that price. If that's not true, it's going to say, does this customer have a price level assigned to them? No, it doesn't. Boom, it defaults to the base price. So thanks, Roy. Appreciate that. So I'm going to show you, got this little icon here. That means I'm supposed to go to NetSuite now. So I'm going to jump back into NetSuite. A couple things. So we're going to look at, I'm going to review. Okay, so we're going to look at key elements of an item record, and then we're going to look at item pricing. So let's go do that. And then I think after this, we'll probably take a quick break, get a drink of water, that kind of thing, and then come back. All right, so we're going to go to an item record. I'm going to open up this kit, and then from here, we'll kind of dive in from here. So this is that kit that I added to the sales order. You can see on the kit I have different components. And so each of these are the components that are part of that kit. And what I didn't mention with kits is that you can also define a different quantity of those. So you could say, oh, this kit, it needs 3 cables or let's say 2 cables, because there's 2 monitors and then a laptop. So we need to add 2 cables. Now, ignore VGA. I know somebody's chuckling VGA. But anyway, let's pretend that's an HDMI cable. So you'd add 2 cables to this anyway. I'm going to open up one of these item records to kind of start from there. And we'll look at some of the values that are, or some of the fields that are here. So first of all, internal ID. So if you were not aware, when you look in the URL, when you're on an item record or any record in NetSuite for that matter, whether it's a sales order, a customer, a purchase order, whatever, there's always this ID equals. That ID number is the internal ID of that record in NetSuite. So this right here, the internal ID of this item is 55. What you can do with internal IDs is you can add them, you can expose the internal ID to the form so that you can have a field right here that says internal ID, and then it'll say 55 in this case. Like I mentioned before, though, you cannot see external ID. And in this case, I don't know if I have the tool. Yeah. So this is a Chrome plugin that does this NetSuite Field Explorer. And I use this a lot of times to say, okay, does this item have an external ID assigned? It does not have an external ID assigned. If it had an external ID assigned to it, it would show up here in my little Field Explorer window. And then I could see what the external ID that's assigned. And like I mentioned, external IDs, they don't default. They're not there. They're not required. But if you assign them, then they're functional for integrations, CSV imports, things like that. Sub item of. So sub item of, if this were a matrix item, we would show the parent item here in the sub item of field. So that's what would link this to a matrix set, that sub item of. Display name code, again, that's the one that's kind of, well, in this case, it's a duplicate of this. When I was doing this, setting up for this presentation, there was nothing in the display name code. So I just copied what was in this item name number over here so that it would have something. But normally this would be like, like Dell Inspiron 14-inch laptop, 5000 2-in-1, so it's something that's descriptive of what this item is. This has a character limit of 250. That's a lot. If you are integrating with a Yahoo store, sorry, that's funny. I haven't seen that note, Yahoo store. Anyway, 250 character limit on the display name code, so you could have a very descriptive display name code, but just be aware the display name code is typically what will show up like in a description field on sales orders, although this one it didn't show up. But for standard inventory items, it'll pop in there. Vendor name code. So if you buy this one product from one vendor, you can put their vendor code in here. You know, maybe they have like a manufacturer's part number or something. That's the intention of the vendor name code. Multiple units of measure, we can assign all of those values. We talked about that. You have classifications like department, location, and class. You don't have to assign those to an item record. Here's your UPC code. Sales and pricing. So this is what we were talking about. Base price, alternate price. We have multiple currencies, so you can assign different prices per currency. I wish NetSuite would do like auto assignment of multiple currencies, you know, based on currency revaluations and whatnot, or conversions. But anyway, it doesn't. You have to assign those manually. Unless if anybody knows a way to do that automatically, let me know. That would be pretty cool. So there's a lot of other functionality here. I'm obviously not going to be able to get to quantity pricing schedules. That's a whole nother layer of pricing that you can get into. I do want to point out right here that this pricing group. So I created this pricing group to talk about the pricing discussion, and I put this item into this pricing group. And as I mentioned, inventory items can only have one. They can only be assigned to one pricing group. So it has to be the groups that you create kind of need to be follow those guidelines, knowing you can only have one per item. Look at some of the other options here, some of the other tabs. We have purchasing and inventory. Here's the field that Renee was talking about, the purchase price field. There's also vendors. If you have a vendor, you can have a purchase price per vendor. So in this case, if this was $250 and this was $200, if I go to create a PO for Cables R Us for this item, it's going to use $200 for the price. If this were empty and no price was populated, it will use the purchase price that's shown up here. Average cost, that's a system calculated field that's going to show up once there's actual transactions, purchasing and receiving transactions, and billing transactions on this for this particular item. Lots of other options here. What else do I want to point out? We're going to talk about locations here in a minute. That's going to be up next, so I'll come back to that. Accounting, so here's where we define all of your different accounts. These are very important to make sure you get them right. You have your COGS, asset and income accounts. You can change these accounts later on, but it does if your periods are open and you change an account, the system will go back and change the impact on those accounts for this item. But if your periods are locked and you change these accounts, it'll only affect transactions moving forward. So just be aware, get your account set up correctly in the first place, and you won't have any problems. This particular account has advanced revenue management, so we have deferred revenue. Most of the time, you're not going to see, you know, some of those other fields there. I think that's it for what I wanted to show on the item record for all of those pertinent fields. So now let's look at the pricing setup. So I'm going to go to my customer Abbott Incorporated here. And again on the kit record types, you can set those prices as well. So you can set different price levels for a kit. You know what, before I do that, let me go to this other group just to point this out. Item group. So here you can see an item group record is pretty limited. There's not a lot of, I mean, there is a UPC code, although that may not make sense. You can see your components here, but there's no accounts. There's no pricing, because all of that's sourced from the components. So just to point that out. All right, going to our customer record here. So if I edit this guy, this is how I would assign custom pricing to a specific customer. So under the financial tab, we go all the way to the bottom and we have this group pricing. So pricing group, if you recall, my laptop, my Inspiron laptop is in that pricing group, and I only have one pricing group created in this demo account, but that's my laptop kits. So now what I'm saying is that this customer is going to get every single item that's in this pricing group for whatever price level I assign right here. So if I have this alternate price, let's say it's the 10% discount, then anytime the customer purchases an item that is in this group, they get 10% off on it. In this case, it's just the alternate price. If I had multiple pricing groups, I can add as many pricing groups as I want to this customer and give them a specific price level on every single pricing group. So alternatively, I can come to my item pricing and I can say, okay, anytime this customer purchases this item, they're going to get a specific either price level or they're going to get a specific price. Now you'll notice that the group did not pop up in this list because remember the group is a price of its component items. So item groups, you can't really give special pricing very easily. I actually haven't experimented with the components of those prices. I wonder if the components of the group are affected by what's set on the customer record. That would be a good experiment. Anyway, food for thought. So here, laptop combo kit, base price doesn't make sense because they're going to get base price by default anyway. So I might say, okay, this customer, for that item, whenever they purchase it, they get this price level. Alternatively, I can just define a custom price. If I do that, I have to define the currency, and then I can put in that custom price. So whenever that is added to an order for that customer, they're going to get this price of $1,500. Roy says they would be impacted by the pricing record within an item group. They would be impacted by the pricing record. So it would change the item group pricing based on what's set up on the customer record. Yeah, I think so too. Okay, so we talked about the pricing group, the item pricing, and then the other thing on a customer is the price level. So the price level, I'll show that pyramid slide one more time after we're done here. But again, I can assign just a price level to that customer, and they get that price for every single item unless there's a pricing group or an item pricing set up on the customer record. And again, that all sources from the inventory, from the item record, whatever set up for the pricing here, and whatever pricing group that they're set up there. Okay, so I think that's everything I wanted to cover on pricing. Tammy question, why at the item level pricing the effective to and from is not provided? Item level pricing. Do you mean date, like date ranges? Because that may be a function that I don't have enabled in this account. Customer item level, yeah, date ranges. Yeah, I think that's just a setting that's not enabled. When you can define a specific date range on when a specific price is good for a certain customer. Yeah, so in tariff application it changes. So that's actually probably a great way to manage tariff stuff as well. Price changes for tariffs. So okay, I'm going to switch back to my slides. Again, just to review this is the hierarchy. Item pricing overrides everything. If there's an item price set up on the customer record, then it goes to the group pricing. If that's set up, then it goes to price level, and then the base price is the default for everything. So, okay, at this point, it's 10:05. We're going to take a 10-minute break. So next topic on our list is inventory locations. Inventory locations in NetSuite have some key pieces of data that they provide. First of all, we have a quantity on hand, so you can have a multiple quantity, different quantities on hand per different locations in NetSuite. This is the total count of inventory items currently available in a specific location. Does reflect real-time stock levels, hopefully. You have a value, so the monetary worth of an inventory held at a location. That's important for financial and asset tracking. That value is sourced from average cost, usually. Could also be standard cost. The average cost is calculated per location. So the average cost is used for cost management, pricing strategies, and again, that NetSuite does that calculation for you. Reorder points, you can have a specific reorder point, which is the inventory level at which new stock should be ordered to prevent stockouts and maintain continuous supply. You have preferred stock levels, which is the ideal amount of stock to keep on hand at a location to meet demand without overstocking. And then you have a lead time, the average, which is the average time between placing an order and receiving the inventory at the location, which influences reorder timing. So these are all components of an inventory location. There are a few other settings and data points that it reports, which I'll show you in the user interface when we get to that. Before we look at the inventory locations in NetSuite, oops, I went backwards. Before we look at those inventory locations, I also want to point out this feature called merchandise hierarchy. And the merchandise hierarchy basically lets you efficiently categorize and manage products or items across your enterprise. It can help you with planning, purchasing, and tracking your product inventory. So the way this works is you have different levels, and then you have different nodes. And you can then assign all of your inventory items to a specific node, which would then also kind of apply to whatever level that node is on. There's no right or wrong way to set up a hierarchy manager. I'm going to show you a couple of other examples of what it looks like. But one of the main advantages of using a merchandise hierarchy is from a reporting perspective. So if you use it, you can use merchandise hierarchy in filtering for safe searches. And it also gives you the ability to to view like financial reports by a merchandise hierarchy. So think of like a custom segment in NetSuite. A merchandise hierarchy also acts like a custom segment. So you can go to an income statement and you can filter by level, by department, and you can see an income statement based on these items or these items or whatever you want to see. So merchandise hierarchy, I think, is a pretty powerful tool in NetSuite. It's a free feature to enable if you have inventory. Here's another example of what a merchandise hierarchy would look like. So you have company level, a group level, a department, and a class. Again, this is just an example. There's no right or wrong way to set this up, but you can kind of see how you would break it out. So if you wanted to report on just women's wear, you can report on just this level. Or if you wanted to report by department of each of the individual aspects of women's wear, then you could report at this level as well. And when you do this, you assign one item to one level, or one, these are like pants would be called a node. So you assign one item to a node. And so that node pants is part of bottoms, which is part of women's wear, which is part of the top level company. The only reason this top level company I found is necessary is if you're maybe multi-subsidiary, multiple companies running. But if you just have one company running in NetSuite, this top level of a company doesn't make sense. Here's another example. So this is kind of a flattened out hierarchy a little bit. So in this case, this company sells machine parts and components that are used in machine shops. So we have like abrasives, batteries, bearings, and then you have subcategories under each one of those. And again, this is just a different example. And if you look at this little graphic right here, this is kind of an overall map of the entire hierarchy. and this little blue square represents what we're seeing right here. So you can see this hierarchy stretches out way to the right. So there's a whole ton of parent categories in this particular hierarchy. So I'm going to flip over to NetSuite. We're going to look at the locations and merchandise hierarchy real quick. And then we will have CPE questions coming up shortly. All right, so we are back in NetSuite. We are on an item record. No, we're not. I'm going to go to, oh yeah, this is the item record. Purchasing and inventory, and then all the way down here at the bottom are our locations. So in this case, we have 3 different locations. You can see there's quantity on hand options. There's your value, your average cost, your last purchase price. This is auto-calculated. Reorder points can be set manually or do auto-calculate. I'll talk about that here in a little bit. Reorder points, preferred stock levels. This will also show you quantity that you have on order, quantity that you have committed to open sales orders, and then also like your quantity available. So your quantity available would be quantity on hand minus quantity committed. Then you also have quantity back ordered, and then a quantity in transit. So lots of useful information from a location perspective. If you just have one location, then you'll just see one option down here, and you'll see all of these same values under the locations. For the merchandise hierarchy, let's see. Why is this not showing the merchandise hierarchy? I did. It was here this morning. Well, anyway, on an I don't know why it's not showing right now, but on an item record, let's go to a different one and see if it's showing up. Normally the merchandise hierarchy, maybe it needs to be exposed on the form. The merchandise hierarchy would be showing down here. And you would use this hierarchy manager to set up your levels, your nodes. Then you can have different versions of the hierarchy. This is just, you know, a very simple example that I set up to show that. I still don't know. I think it's just not exposed to the to that form. So here's my kit laptop combo, and I can assign a merchandise hierarchy here. My hierarchy node is laptop. So you assign it at the item level. Okay, so that's our locations and merchandise hierarchy. We're going to switch back. And one more thing, and then we're going to have our CPE question. We're going to talk about methods to add inventory. There are different ways to add inventory into NetSuite. You can do it with an item receipt. An item receipt is always started with a purchase order or a transfer order. It adds the received inventory to the specified location that's on the item receipt. This is the standard method for receiving inventory in NetSuite. Then we have an inventory adjustment. Inventory adjustments are a standalone transaction. They're not reliant on purchase orders. They're used primarily for corrective adjustments like missing inventory or inventory once missing but then found. Inventory adjustments, they do not balance out the GL and they do preserve LIFO and FIFO costing methods. So inventory doesn't start with the purchase order. There's no vendor bill tied to an inventory adjustment. It's kind of, like I said, it's a standalone record type. And then we have an adjust inventory worksheet, which is similar to an inventory adjustment, but there's some fundamental differences. An inventory worksheet is used to enter changes to quantity or value of inventory items, excluding lot or serial numbers items and inactive items. Lot or serial number items you cannot do those in an inventory adjust or the adjust inventory worksheet, but you can do them in an inventory adjustment. This adjust inventory quantities exclusive of previous stock totals. So it kind of like overrides anything that NetSuite says it has in inventory. I'll talk about these in a little bit more detail here coming up. But right now, we're going to jump into our third polling question, and we are going to have a bunch of polling questions coming up in a little bit more rapid sequence here. Here's our polling question number 3. What is the main difference between item groups and kit packages? A, groups have no price, kits are free. B, group price is the sum of its members, while a kit price is independent of its members. C, groups are only for digital items, kits are for physical items. D, groups cannot be sold, kits can. About 30 seconds left on this one. Probably going to go a little bit quicker through the last part of the presentation here. Just know that, again, we record and post the slides and the recording. If I go through something a little bit quick, or I'm not able to answer a question, we will get to the questions later, and you can always review things later on. All right, I'm going to end the poll and share the results. The answer here is B. Group price is the sum of its members, while a kit price is independent of its members. B is the correct answer. All right, and we will move on. So inventory adjustment versus adjust inventory worksheet. So inventory adjustment is inclusive of the previous stock total, meaning if you add 10 with your inventory adjustment, it increases the existing inventory count by 10. So if you had 5 and you do an inventory adjustment for 10, your new total will be 15. The adjust inventory worksheet is exclusive of the previous stock total. So it resets the inventory count to the entered quantity regardless of previous counts. So if you have 5 showing on hand now and you do an inventory worksheet of 10, your new total will be 10. It will basically ignore any quantity that was put in the system before. The inventory worksheet should be used in only very special situations. Should not be the transaction that you use to adjust your inventory on a regular basis. Another good reason to use an inventory worksheet is to reset your average cost. So adjust inventory worksheet averages costing and updates average cost. It also that resets the historical average cost information. You really only want to use the adjust inventory worksheet for corrections to maintain accurate costing, resetting stock counts. Inventory adjustment, like I said, it's like if some inventory is missing, you do a stock count, you determine you're 1 or 2 items short of what you thought you had on hand, you would use an inventory adjustment to do that. So those are the key differences between inventory adjustment and adjust inventory worksheet. Again, back to the item receipt concept. The item receipt is when you purchase product from a vendor, and you use an item receipt to add that inventory into NetSuite. That's the standard way of adding inventory. All right, we're going to talk about bins as it relates to inventory management. Bins are a feature of NetSuite you can use or you don't have to use if you use inventory. The purpose of bin management is to identify specific places in your warehouse where inventory items are stored. It helps track on-hand quantities within a warehouse, and it simplifies the inventory organization. Bin assignment options. Each item can be stored in one bin, or one bin can have multiple items in it. Locations can have preferred bins assigned per item to optimize storage and retrieval. So I'll show you an example. I have a photograph of kind of some of the differences there. Bin numbering. Bin numbers can be alphanumeric or alphanumeric. Using bins helps organize receiving and picking, and most inventory transactions require a bin for an item fulfillment. So if you turn on bins or bin management, you can choose to either require it or not require it on transactions. It's a good idea that if you're going to use bins, that you do require it for every transaction. That way you're tracking the physical location of items in your warehouse, so you know exactly where they are at all times, in theory. So here's an example of a bin number. This is an alphanumeric bin numbering. So in this example, we have the bin number would be AFE-05. In this case, A would be the main section of the warehouse. F would be the row, which maybe is 6 sets of shelves. E is the set of shelves, maybe that's 10 individual shelves. And then 05 is the shelf number with multiple boxes on each shelf labeled with item numbers. So here's a photographic example of what that would look like. So here's in this scenario, one shelf right here is a bin, and this bin might be AFE05. And then we have multiple items that are in that bin. So when you go to put away items, you come to this bin, and then they have them, in this case, they're marked. So it's very easy to find the item that you're looking for by the SKU. In the example down here, you have bins with one item in them. So this barcode right here, this is the bin number. And in this case, the intention is that you only have one item in this bin because there may be very small items and you don't want to have to pick through and figure out which one is which. So you would only assign one item per bin in this location. There's no right or wrong way to do it, but this is just kind of some examples, give you ideas of how to use bins in your warehouse. There's also a feature that is advanced bin management, which makes things a lot more complicated. You add this concept of inventory detail, which represents bins. I'm not going to go into details on that right now, but just know that there's kind of a basic bin management, which is very simple. And then there's an advanced bin management, which gives you a lot more capabilities and functionality. Okay, here we go. CPE question number 4. Let's bring my poll back up. Number 4. We'll launch that. The question is, assembly items are made by combining raw materials you stock, while kits and groups are simply bundled items sold together. True or false? Yeah, Roy's pointed out there's a tool for CSV import for adjust inventory worksheets. Works really great for go lives, importing quantity and costs. So yeah, that's a good point, Roy. How do you set up preferred bins for items in your inventory? That's Krista, I'm sorry, I probably don't have time to go into detail on that at this point. And it also depends on if you have just the standard bin management or the advanced bin management. But basically, there's a place on your item records where you can add a bin, and then you define a bin as the preferred bin. That's kind of in a nutshell how you would do it. But there's other complexity to it as well. All right, I'm going to end this poll. The answer to that is true. So assembly items are made by combining raw materials you stock. Everybody knows that one. Okay. I'm going to close that out and we're going to move on. Yeah, there you go, Roy. All right, so let's talk about RF scanners for using those with bins. There is the functionality, the option of using a RF, which is radio frequency scanner. You can use that in combination with bins as part of your warehouse management strategy. RF scanners help quickly locate and track items stored in specific bins within a warehouse. You can scan bin numbers. You can scan item UPC codes to automatically remove them from bins. It makes it simplifies the receiving and picking process. It reduces manual errors in inventory counts and bin assignments. And basically integrating with NetSuite, bin management ensures real-time updates of inventory quantities and locations. RF scanners just help make the whole thing a lot faster and more efficient. There are different tools out there. There are other companies that that provide RF scanner applications. There's also NetSuite native warehouse management functionality. So there's lots of options out there if you're interested in using RF scanners with your warehouse management. last topic on bins, there's this bin put away worksheet. So this is just something to understand when you're using bins. The bin put away worksheet is used when items are received without an assigned bin. So using this worksheet lets you put away multiple items to their preferred bins automatically. It saves time and reduces errors. It can generate a printed list showing items to be put away and their designated bin locations. So to your point, Chris, that on the preferred inventory, or I'm sorry, the preferred bin, you would use preferred bins in combination with the bin put away worksheet to help you put things away quickly. And most inventory transactions involving bins require items to be assigned to a bin, such as item fulfillments, item fulfillments. That's item fulfillments, item receipts. Maybe that's questionable on that. But you definitely want to make sure that if you're using bin management, you're putting inventory into bins. But not item receipts. Yeah, so that's if you don't, this is Chris's point or I'm sorry, Steve's point in the chat. If you require bins on transactions, it doesn't do it on item receipts, and then that's why you would use this bin put away worksheet record. Okay, so let's move on. We're going to talk about inventory transfer versus a transfer order. So this is a way to move inventory if you have multiple locations in NetSuite. There's two different ways to do that. First of all, we have an inventory transfer. So an inventory transfer is a simple transaction to move inventory from one warehouse or location to another. No other records are created in this process. It does not involve a transfer cost or shipping details or anything like that. It's quick and straightforward method for internal inventory management. So on an inventory transfer record, you're going to have a from location, a to location, and then an item, and then you put in your items and your quantity, and that's about it. The other option is a transfer order. So a transfer order triggers a series of events facilitating inventory management between different warehouses or locations. It includes elements such as a transfer cost, a shipping method, a ship to location. As part of the inventory or part of a transfer order process, there's different record types that are used through the process. If items are not in the from location, a back order is created automatically. So think of a transfer order as like a sales order. So a sales order represents something that needs to happen, like you shipping product to your customer. A transfer order is the same thing. It represents something that needs to happen. You need to transfer inventory from one location to another. So a little bit deeper dive on the transfer order process. Think of it as a sales order to start off. You start with an item fulfillment. So an item fulfillment is first created to remove the inventory from the current warehouse location. Then you physically ship it with that item fulfillment. Then the receiving location physically receives the inventory, and then they create an item receipt that adds the inventory back into their warehouse location. So this process is designed to track inventory management between physical locations. If items to be transferred are not available in the from location, as I mentioned before, then a back order is automatically created, much like it would do if an item was on a sales order and you didn't have it in stock. When the item is eventually received, it automatically gets committed to the inventory transfer, ensuring accurate stock tracking. So that's the same concept as what happens on a sales order. If you have items on a sales order, well, actually, that's not true. It would only get automatically assigned if it were a special order or PO. So that actually functions a little bit differently. But you can set up a transfer order to represent a transfer that needs to happen in the future as well. That's kind of the point there. Michael, your question, if using average costing, does an inventory transfer use the existing average cost at the from location? Yes, it does. It'll default to the average cost, but I think you can override that with a transfer cost. Okay. CPE questions, rapid fire, number 5. Here we go. CPE number 5. I'm going to launch this. The question is, which field is the primary identifier that appears in transaction lists for items in NetSuite? Might be a tricky one. UPC code, item name number, external ID, or vendor code. Okay. Helping each other out in the chat. I like that. Thank you. All right, about 15 seconds left for the CPE question. CPE going once, going twice. Going to end the poll, share the results. The answer is B, item name number is the field that is the primary identifier. Remember I called that the SKU? That's the one that's going to show up in transaction lists for items. Okay, hold tight. We got one more CPE question before we move on. So we're going to do CPE question number 6. That is launched. In an inventory adjustment, quantities are added or subtracted from existing stock total, while the adjust inventory worksheet resets stock count to the entered quantity. True or false? Thirty seconds for the CPE question. Kind of backloaded all my CPE questions on this presentation. All right. CPE question going once, going twice. All right, I'm going to end that. The answer here is true. An inventory adjustment, quantities are added or subtracted from the existing total. With the adjust inventory worksheet, it is the nuclear option that resets stock counts to the entered quantity. So that is true. Oh, and there's the results. Okay, I'm going to close that out and we're going to move on. So let's talk about importing and exporting inventory. The reason I bring this up is I have worked with clients before that don't use CSV imports for inventory, and I think it's an important tool to understand. It's an important tool to know how to use effectively, because it'll let you basically upload and update items in NetSuite in mass fashion. So couple bullet points about CSV, about importing and exporting. So CSV imports, kit components must be uploaded using multiple files due to their complexity. So you can create item records with CSV imports, and you can create kit records with that. But the kit components, there's a functionality in CSV imports where you upload 2 files, and one file is like the primary reference, and then the second file is like detail of that primary item, in this case a kit, and it adds extra functionality. Sometimes it's a little bit tricky to figure out that 2 file requirement, but just know that sometimes you have to use 2 files to upload individual records. So you can create an upload template in Excel and then create a matching save CSV import to save the mapping between the template and NetSuite fields. So this is what I recommend for best practice if for creating item records in NetSuite. So you're going to have a whole bunch of different fields that are going to be required. You're going to want your item name number, a display name code, maybe a vendor code. You can do your pricing in a CSV import, your UPC, your descriptions, all of that stuff. And you want to make sure that you get all of that loaded whenever you create a new item. So if you create an Excel template then you know, okay, these are the fields that I need to upload into NetSuite. Then you can create a saved CSV import that matches the fields in the Excel file. That way you don't have to remap your Excel file to different fields in NetSuite every time. One other thing I want to point out about this is a little insider tip. In the Excel file or the CSV file, if your header is the internal ID of the field in NetSuite, then NetSuite will automatically map it to the correct field in the CSV import screen. So let me say that again. If your field header in your file is the internal ID of your field on your item record, NetSuite will automatically map it. Let me show you real quick what I mean by that. So if I'm looking at a field in NetSuite and I click on it, it's going to show me this item, this field ID. And this is actually, you have to turn on show internal IDs to see this. But so if I put item ID as my file header in my CSV file, NetSuite will automatically map that to the display or to the item name number field. Or if I do display name, it's going to automatically map it to display name code. If you have a bunch of custom fields, it works the exact same way. You would click on the field name, get your custom field name there, and then put that in your CSV header. So that's kind of a power tip. I didn't know that for a long time, and I found it out a couple years ago and thought it was so cool. Anyway, so talking about exports now. So exports can be done from item list views. They can be done from safe searches. You can also export from reports. What I like to do is, like, if you know you need to go through and update a bunch of different fields, create a safe search of all of those fields that you want to do, that you want to change. You can export that safe search with all of the right columns and rows, and then if you want to make changes, then you can turn around and just re-import that right back into NetSuite. So using templates and saved imports is best practice. It streamlines repetitive import tasks and reduces errors. Couple of other additional inventory import options. I think Roy talked about this in the chat or something similar. So you can import inventory adjustments and inventory transfers. They can be a little bit tricky, but you can do a CSV import of these. It may require a little bit of trial and error. When you're importing item records into NetSuite, use either the internal ID or the external ID to represent the items. You can use the item name number, but it's kind of it's hit and miss if you use the item name number. It's like sometimes NetSuite can't find the right item based on that. So if you use external ID or inventory or internal ID, you're guaranteed to find the right item when you do the import. If you mess it up, you can delete the imported record, try it again. Once you figure out the correct process, create a template and a matching save CSV import to streamline future imports. Saves time, reduces errors. Okay, so that's our CSV imports. Let's talk about inventory management. So there's a lot to the inventory management preferences in NetSuite. I'm going to go through these. There's definitely a lot more that I could talk about, a lot of detail we can go into, but I'm just going to give you a high-level overview of it so that you know that it's there and kind of understand what its basic functionality is. So in our inventory management preferences, these are global preferences that we can set up that define how NetSuite manages inventory, stock levels, reorder points, and things like that. So here's some key terms to understand in the preferences. So we have lead time. You can use lead time per warehouse to estimate the number of days between order entry and receipt, helping plan timely replenishments. So lead time can be hard-coded in. You can also do an automatic lead time calculation on each item record. Safety stock, you set safety stock levels per warehouse to maintain buffer inventory and protect against stockouts during demand fluctuations. Again, these are global preferences, so I'll kind of show you what this looks like in NetSuite. Preferred stock level. This is another option. You define a default preferred stock level to guide optimal inventory quantities and overstocking. And this is stock level is in number of days of stock in NetSuite. Order analysis interval. This is where you configure the intervals to assess purchasing patterns and optimize reorder timing based on historical data. You have to have a historical data in the system to be able to do any of this automatic analysis. You also have a seasonal analysis interval. You use the seasonal analysis to adjust inventory levels in response to seasonal demand variations and trends. One example here would be if you have, like right now, we're looking at, we're looking at the holidays coming up pretty soon. If you are going to expect a higher level of demand over the next 3, 4, 6 months, you can tell NetSuite to adjust for this higher levels of this season. I'll show you that setting in NetSuite as well. There's also an estimated demand change, so you can incorporate demand changes to proactively adapt inventory levels for anticipated shifts in customer demand. So if demand is either going to go up or down, you can adjust the calculations based on that demand. So transactions and calculations in inventory management. These basically, here's a screenshot of those global inventory management preferences. So consider the impact of different transaction types, such as sales orders versus cash sales on inventory calculations. It's not showing here, but there's a setting down here to choose which one to use for the demand calculations. So if you use sales orders for demand calculations, and you have like orders that are canceled or don't ever come through, then it still uses those. But then you can also argue it only will calculate based on the invoices or the fulfilled. So there's a lot of considerations here. If you're looking at using these settings, you should read about them in NetSuite because there's a lot more complexity than what I can cover here. The day of the week and the time of the day when inventory calculations are performed can affect reorder points and stock level accuracy. NetSuite calculates new inventory levels only when there's activity on the SKU. Periods without sales may cause stock levels to remain unchanged. This is kind of a big gotcha when you're using these this auto calculation of inventory management. If you don't have any transactional history, NetSuite doesn't calculate it correctly. It doesn't look at a gap of not selling something for 6 months and say, oh geez, we haven't sold it. We need to stop selling it, or we need to stop stocking it. There definitely needs to be some level of human intervention here and analysis, because periods without sales may cause the stock levels to remain unchanged. And the converse is true as well. Let's say you have a brand new item that you're starting to sell, and you want to make sure you have it in stock to sell it, but NetSuite has 0 sales history on it, so it's never going to recommend to stock that item. So you need to be aware that until there's a sales history on an item, you might have to be manually managing how much of that inventory item you want to be stocking until there's maybe 6 months or a year worth of sales history. Accurate timing and transaction tracking are critical to avoid overstocking or stockouts based on demand and lead times. So these are your global inventory management preferences. I'll go into NetSuite and show these real quick. There's also this inventory management per item. So you can set this up per item. You can say on the item level, you can define a preferred stock level and a reorder point, but you can also do an auto calculation. The auto calculation uses those management settings that we just talked about. There's a lead time calculation, a seasonal demand, reorder multiple. So if you have to always buy 2 or 10 of that item whenever you purchase them, this is your reorder multiple. It takes that into account in the calculations. And then you also have a safety stock, which is a buffer stock. in that example that I just mentioned, where you have a brand new item and you haven't ever sold any, but you want to make sure you always have some in stock, you would use safety stock of like 1 or 10 or whatever, to make sure that if you sell out, NetSuite is recommending to add more, because it uses that safety stock in the reorder calculations. So I'm not going to go through this in detail. Again, the slides will be available, but I also recommend looking at Suite Answers, because this can be a little bit daunting, or a little bit confusing. So there's these auto calculate reorder points, and there's different ways of auto calculating these. If you're going to use the auto calculations, you need to understand how these different settings interact with each other, to make sure that it's calculating correctly for you. A little bit short on time, so I'm not going to go into detail on those. But I will pop into NetSuite real quick and show you where these different settings are that I just mentioned. So the inventory management preferences is under Setup, Accounting, Inventory Management Preferences. Here we have a bunch of different settings that we can configure. If you have multiple locations, I highly recommend using lead time and safety stock per location. Otherwise, NetSuite's going to average everything out across different locations. Maybe you want it to do that, but I think in most cases we want to calculate lead time and safety stock per location. Here's your default lead time. So if you don't have lead time identified on an item record, it's going to default to 14 days. Your default safety stock, again, if it's not on the item record, this is what it'll use. Default preferred stock level is 30 days. This is an important setting. If you want to have, let's say you want to have 60 days of inventory on hand at any one point, you would change this to 60. And that tells NetSuite, okay, based on my sales history, I need to have a certain number on hand to last me 60 days. And then you have your order analysis interval, so you can go backwards in time, 6 months. You can change this to go backwards 10 or 12 months. Your seasonal analysis interval, this is where you would say, okay, I want you to look forward 4 months, and I want you to say, okay, my demand over the next 4 months is what I want to use, and you would have to check this on the item record for this to be in effect. Your estimated demand change, this is your transactions to consider orders or actual sales, and then your time of calculations. One thing you can do is, if you didn't know, you can always hover here and hit submit and calculate. So then it'll automatically recalculate all of your inventory, reorder points, preferred stock levels, and lead times basically on demand. So that's the inventory management preferences that are global. If we go to an item record and we look at our purchasing and inventory, the settings that we're referring to are in here. So we can, I wish NetSuite would fix this in the UI. This is auto calculate reorder point. This is purchase lead time auto calc. Oh, see, this is so wonky. There's your preferred stock level auto calculate. Let me edit this real quick. So maybe it looks a little bit better here. Wonky, yeah. Let's see. Yeah, this is okay. So if you turn off this auto calculate, then basically you can manually set your preferred stock levels down here per location. If it's turned on, you can't set it, because it's going to auto calculate that for you. You can override Redwood. Yeah, I know that this is not Redwood specific. This wonkiness is also non-Redwood UI, just FYI. Anyway, so if you want to override the number of days for your preferred stock level for this item, you can override that here. Otherwise, it uses the global inventory preferences that we just looked at. There's your reorder point, your purchase lead time. Again, if you uncheck that, you can manually put that in. Otherwise, it's auto calculating. And then your safety stock you can define in quantity or days. So that's the same. They both apply to the safety stock level there. So inventory management, global level settings, and then also in combination with item level settings. You can always override those values manually. If you uncheck auto calculate, you can put in whatever you want there if you're doing some analysis outside of NetSuite, for example. Okay, so we are going to get back into our CPE question. So we're going to go CPE question number 7. Let's get that one pulled up here. Number 7, I'm going to launch that CPE. Which of the following is a key benefit of using bin management in NetSuite? A, it eliminates the need for purchase orders. B, it organizes warehouse storage by tracking item locations within bins. C, it prevents inventory from being sold. D, it automatically creates invoices. About 20 seconds left. CPE question number 7. All right, we're going to end that CPE question and I'll share the results. The answer is B. It organizes warehouse storage by tracking item locations within bins. Right, and we're going to jump right into our CPE question number 8. Let me launch this one. Which transaction is created first when performing a transfer order between warehouses? Item receipt, vendor bill, item fulfillment, or purchase order? I kind of, on the redwood theme, I'm kind of torn. I kind of like the way it looks, but then I'm really used to native NetSuite, and then I also use the Suite Advanced plugin, which makes NetSuite look totally different. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure about redwood. I feel like it's kind of nice looking though. But anyway, 10 seconds left on the last CPE question of the day. I figured NetSuite would want me to use redwood in this presentation, so that's why I'm doing it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end this poll and I'll share the results. The answer here is C, item fulfillment. That is the first transaction created when performing a transfer order between warehouses. Yeah, so Roy, your point, you've been using redwood for a year and you're sure they'll force our hand at some point. You're probably right. You're probably right. All right, so I'm going to end that. And with that, that is actually the end of my primary presentation today. I do have slides for my bonus material. Like I said, we may not get to it today, but these will be available in the slide deck that I post on our website. I talk about purchase order to payment process here. And then I also talk about drop shipping overview, drop shipping versus we have dropship orders versus special order drop shipping. There's a couple of key differences there, but we'll go ahead and skip past those for the day. I'm just a few minutes over my time, so thank you all very much for sticking with me, and I hope you learned a whole bunch of stuff, or at least a couple things today. And if you have any follow-up questions, we can use our open forum to do that. We can also have conversations through our LinkedIn user group or our LinkedIn group. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike Cackline, who is going to walk us through some of the key highlights of the newest release, 2025.2.
Cool. Thanks, Cory. Howdy, everyone. Let me
All
get
right.
set up here.
I can hear you fine.
Cool. Thank you. See. Need to find the right window. Here, hang on. Give me 1 minute. All right, here we go. Let's share here. Okay, so we are going to talk about Cliff Notes for the NetSuite 2025.2 release. So some of y'all are already on this, some of y'all are not quite on this yet. A good reminder is that as of, I don't know, a couple releases ago now, you can actually change the date on when this release goes live in your production environment. That was like a really big deal. I think that's under page on release something. I don't know if somebody could refresh me on that, but there is a page in here where you can actually schedule it.
Oh yeah, I think it's in the setup menu there somewhere.
Yeah.
Customer scheduled maintenance.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay. So be aware of that for those of y'all who, especially if like, you get that magic email or you pull up your main page. This is where you find the release notes, by the way. You pull up your main page, you'll see this new release portlet. And typically NetSuite does the same thing. They'll do this big splash, and over here they'll like not give you a date for quite some time, and then magically one day you show up and there's a date there, and then there's this like little check now. I think that might take you to the link. But the thing to note is that they have release notes here. There's a little link. Always a good idea to read those. So that is what we are going to be looking at, is kind of the release notes. So I went through and thank you, Cory. Customer dash scheduled maintenance.
Oh, you beat me to it. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's, again, it's a good page if NetSuite gives you a date that's like, oh, 2 days before close or right in the middle of close or something like that. And you're like, I just can't do that. You can use that page and push or pull the date towards something more appropriate for you. All right. So I've got on my other screen here, you can't see, but just some kind of cliff notes I took on the release notes. All right, here we go. So super high level summary that was in here. Just kind of, actually I read it top to bottom, but just super high level summary. There were some changes to ARM, Advanced Revenue Management. I would call them minor technical updates. So if you're an ARM, you weenie, then yeah, go read through them. If not, then you just don't care. There's a change about expense allocations that now, so if you're using expense allocations and had issues with really large allocations failing, it sounds like they put a bug fix in for that. So you may want to go look at that. There is now a Suite app available for North American electronic invoicing. So this one to me was a little interesting. We don't do this where I'm at, but just it seems like that would be somewhere in the future. And from what they're saying, it sounds like it's much more common in Europe. So there's now a Suite app for doing electronic invoicing in North America. So be aware of that. Mobile apps. So I'm going to deviate a little bit from the bullets here, but there's two mobile app changes I noticed in there. So first, if you're using manufacturing, the mobile app for manufacturing, that mobile app now supports auto generation of serial numbers. So if you had serial number inventory and we're using the mobile app, it now supports creating the serial numbers. That to me sounded like it could be a big deal for some people. Not quite sure though. If someone was chiming there. The other is if you are using the NetSuite Workforce Management mobile app, your users will be forced to upgrade that mobile app to the latest version. So just be aware, because I know a lot of people kind of have that if it ain't broke, don't fix it mindset. But for the workforce management mobile app, you must upgrade with 2025.2. You must upgrade the mobile app. Some more notes in here. Ship Central. That's, yeah, some right here. So if you are using Ship Central, just kind of reading through these enhancements, it sounded like they had some pretty decent upgrades regarding printing labels and just printing reports and things. So if you're using Ship Central or you looked at it in the past and you're like, yeah, this looks useless to me, you might want to look at it again. It looks like there were some pretty decent enhancements. Let's see, back to electronic invoicing suite app, which I mentioned a little bit above. One of the kind of notable things was they mentioned that they now do a license check if you are using the electronic invoicing suite app with custom transactions. That kind of struck me as something where like maybe they noticed people had figured out a workaround or some kind of loophole to using that app, and I have not used that app, but you can create custom transactions of type sales order, i.e. invoice. So now they're doing a license check for that. So if you're using said loophole, that is now closed. Another one I think that will be relevant to a number of people on this call, there was a note in here about Avalara. So if you are a Avalara user and you have a sandbox in NetSuite and a sandbox in Avalara, apparently there is some challenges in having those two sandboxes talk to one another. And there's a note in here around provisioning and company creation in the Avalara sandbox, now talking to the NetSuite sandbox properly. So heads up if that rings any bells to you, like Avalara sandbox talking to NetSuite sandbox. Otherwise, there were some updates to Suite People. So if you use Suite People, you may want to go check that out. Suite Tax, which probably a number of you use. There were some updates there. My notes here, it sounds like they were useful. You can now create exceptions based on item record and nexus. That actually sounded like a pretty big deal to me. I'm kind of surprised you could not create exceptions, but apparently you can now with Suite Tax. So if tax exceptions were an issue for you with Suite Tax, you may want to go check. Looks like it's in there now. Also, they mentioned around the legacy Suite app for Suite Tax, there were some upgrades around EOPT compliance for withholding taxes, if that impacts you. On the scripting side, well, let me hang on, go to UX, UI, UX, and jump around because I'm going to put AI at the end. So UI, UX, they move on the note of Redwood. They have a list of other pages that they have moved to Redwood. And the basic theme I kind of noticed in there is they're all kind of back end pages, admin pages that you're never there. And if you're there, you're only there once. So it kind of feels like they're just slowly but surely moving things over in a non-intrusive way still. Biggie is that they, the note here is sublist headers remain visible while scrolling. So this is probably going to impact every one of us. So, if you're looking at a transaction or a project or something that has a whole pile of lines on it in a sublist, and you start scrolling down, the headers now remain there while you're scrolling. So that is a feature they say they have in 2025.2. Bernie, I'll note your note when I'm finished here. Kind of skipping back up, scripting, for those of y'all who care, there's a new developer resource hub website. I did check that out. It's pretty basic, but it actually has a link to a GitHub that is actually pretty interesting. So if you're a developer, go check out the NetSuite Developer Resource Hub. Looks like you don't have to sign up for it, you just go to it. There's some updates to the REST web service. They are deprecating SOAP version 2020 or 2018.2. They're retiring that. So this, I think, is going to impact people who are using Sligo. So Corey, you could probably uh, kind of chime in here too. But when you do the standard Sligo integrations into NetSuite, Sligo uses SOAP. And one of the little pick list things you drop down is which SOAP version you want to use. And NetSuite, this isn't new, retiring older versions. It just NetSuite does this. They retire, thank you, Roy, it's the WSDL. NetSuite, over time, they retire the older WSDLs as they add new ones. So they are retiring 2018.2. I mentioned Sligo because if your connection is using 2018.2, you might want to just pick the pick list and use a later WSDL.
I do have a little bit more information on that, Mike. Yeah, so I think that Sligo, other iPaaS platforms are going to be similar. I have a client that has an integration from a 3PL that is SOAP based, and so that 3PL is going to have to update their integrations. They're phasing out SOAP completely by 2028.2. I think. So it's a 3-year complete phase out for all of that.
Yeah, and actually, Corey, I put in a support ticket to Sligo, basically asking point blank, like, what are you guys going to do about this? Because we don't really have an easy option otherwise, and they kind of sent it to dev. So I'm curious. I'm sure they'll resolve that because
I
that would
agree.
be,
Yep.
Okay, SDF, back on scripting. SDF supports new dependencies for creating custom roles. So if you're a developer and use SDF, there's some new features there around custom roles. And then the kind of final note I have here, which is interesting, is on AI. This is something I'm starting to spend more time on, and it just kind of bleeds into scripting, but I kind of want to give a super high level. So on the scripting side, SDF now supports what they call the AI MCP custom tool script deployments. I'll get in that in a minute. There is a new NetSuite AI connector service. And on that NetSuite Developer Resource Hub, under GitHub, there is a set of sample scripts, Suite scripts, that you can use or you can write for MCP endpoints. So I think, to everybody who, this is all super Greek to most people on this call, but the super, super high level, at least my high level read of what NetSuite's doing with AI is they are like, I'm actually really excited about this. They, instead of saying like, we're going to give this like pre-canned AI, you use our bot and that's all you have, they're starting under the philosophy of like, hey, so your devs can go write like custom endpoints in your NetSuite solution as a suite script. And then once that custom endpoint's in, you can just hook it into your AI kind of ecosystem. And you can start asking, your end users can ask like super high level questions of like, hey, what's, the revenue for this particular customer, and the bot will know to go talk to your custom endpoint and run the very specific report that you've written to answer that kind of question, and then give it back to you in plain English. So like this functionality is now in NetSuite. Like we as developers can write these things, but NetSuite hasn't made it really loud that this is a thing, but just be aware it's a thing. Let's see, I do have, there's some features on the bill capture and matching improvements. So if you're using NetSuite Native's bill capture and bill matching, it looks like they're doing more improvements there as well. All right, I think we got a lot of AI conversation there. Bernie, you had a question. Can I please expand on the need to upgrade NetSuite Mobile? Bernie, if you are using, which one is it here? Because there's not just NetSuite, there's like a number of different mobile apps. And the workforce management mobile app. So if you're using workforce management, it sounds like with 2025.2, you will be required to be on the latest version of the workforce management mobile app.
Isn't that part of Sweet People? The workforce management?
Sounds like it would be, yeah, but I think the
Pretty
notes
sure
are,
it is. Yeah.
Yes, so Roy's talking about the NetSuite legacy data source. Yeah, so if you're using Suite Analytics Connect and you use the old NetSuite.com version, you have probably been receiving emails like we have for the past like 2 years, basically saying that we see you're still using this and you need to stop because it goes away by 2026.1. So if you're using the old NetSuite.com Suite Analytics Connect endpoint, that will be gone by March, somewhere in that time. And yeah, you will upgrade to the NetSuite2.com, which will then, although Roy, to your point, we're using it from an external platform. But you'll migrate to the NetSuite2.com, which quite frankly, the data structure is way more sensible than the old NetSuite.com. All right, thank you, Roy. You said 2025.2. I thought I remember 2026.1. Okay. Any other questions or notes? I think we can kind of just bump into an open forum at this point, right?
Yep. Sounds
Yep.
good. I'll stop recording from here.